The roar of the engine shattered the silence of the airfield. On the radar screen of the Chinese air defense system, the scanning beam moved rhythmically, soothingly. The duty operator, sipping his now cold tea, lazily let his gaze slide over the green flickering dots. Everything was calm, just as always. But suddenly a new mark. A signal flickered for a second like a ghost in the night, then disappeared, only to reappear as if playing hide and seek. The operator cast a quick glance at the columns of hieroglyphs and numbers that had appeared in the upper right corner of the screen. The computer was analyzing the data, attempting to identify the target. Speed, altitude, radar signature. B-21 appeared on the screen in cold, emotionless letters. The duty officer's heart began to beat faster. He picked up the receiver and loudly announced into the microphone, "An unidentified aerial object detected, presumably an American B-21 bomber." At that very moment, deep within the command center, a red warning light flashed urgently, and the sharp sound of a siren rang out. The Chinese military machine had awakened. The world once again found itself on the brink of another geopolitical crisis. A strategic American stealth bomber had been spotted in the skies over Taiwan, an aircraft capable of bypassing air defense systems undetected and carrying both conventional and nuclear munitions. This incident immediately sparked a storm of discussion among military experts and politicians on both sides of the Pacific. Was this a planned demonstration flight, an accidental incursion into airspace, or a deliberate message to China? Official sources in Washington refrained from commenting on the details of the operation, but the very fact that such an aircraft appeared near territory that Beijing considers part of the People's Republic of China could already be seen as a provocation. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the Ministry of Defense wasted no time responding. Beijing expressed a strong protest and demanded an explanation from the United States while simultaneously raising the combat readiness of its forces in the region. The question now was whether this episode would mark a new turning point in the escalating tensions, or if both sides would manage to step back from the brink. For now, this is merely a hypothetical scenario, but could it become a reality? And if so, under what circumstances? The Taiwan Strait remains one of the most volatile flashpoints on the global map. For China, Taiwan is an inseparable part of the country, whereas the United States supports the island as an independent democratic territory, supplying it with weapons and military assistance. The appearance of an American stealth bomber near Taiwan would not only heighten tensions in the region, but also serve as a demonstration of Washington's readiness to use force if necessary. This incident could provoke a new arms race in the region. The Chinese military would gain additional justification to modernize its air defense systems, increase the number of combat patrols, and conduct aggressive exercises in the Taiwan Strait. For U.S. allies in the region, such as Japan, South Korea, and Australia, this would be a signal that American security guarantees remain intact, but it would also raise the risk of these countries being drawn into a potential conflict. From a geopolitical perspective, this incident would take place against the backdrop of an intensifying rivalry between the United States and China, which has long extended beyond just one region. Economic warfare, technological competition, and diplomatic confrontations all create a setting in which any military maneuver is perceived as a potential step toward escalation. The roots of the Taiwan crisis date back to 1949, when after the Chinese Civil War, supporters of Chiang Kai-shek retreated to the island of Taiwan, declaring it the Republic of China. Beijing has since refused to recognize Taiwan as a separate state, insisting that its reunification with mainland China is only a matter of time. For decades, the United States has supported Taiwan, officially not recognizing its independence, but treating the island as a strategic ally. In 1979, Washington established diplomatic relations with the PRC, but simultaneously passed the Taiwan Relations Act, which allowed it to continue providing military assistance to Taipei. Since the beginning of the 21st century, tensions surrounding Taiwan have remained high. China has significantly increased its military budget, actively developed its Navy and Air Force, and escalated pressure on Taipei by conducting military exercises near the island. In response, the United States has increased arms shipments to Taiwan and conducted joint drills with its allies. The flight of an American bomber over Taiwan would become the next link in this chain of confrontation. Whether it was accidental, a concealed message, or a deliberate provocation is not even the most important question. What matters more is that this incident would push the world closer to a dangerous threshold, beyond which lies the risk of actual military conflict. So far, no American bomber has flown over Taiwan, but let's imagine ourselves in the place of Pentagon strategists and consider what type of aircraft would be chosen for such a mission. The current U.S. bomber fleet consists of 4 models: the 70-year-old veteran Boeing B-52 Stratofortress, the B-1B Lancer, and 2 stealth bombers, the B-2 Spirit and the B-21 Raider. Sending the aging B-52? Perhaps it would impress some third world rebels or Afghan fighters, but certainly not China. The same can be said about the B-1B, which is not the most modern aircraft and is already set to be replaced by the new B-21 Raider. This leaves only the B-2 Spirit and the B-21 Raider. Both aircraft are designed using stealth technology, have a long operational range, and are built for missions in heavily defended airspace. They represent the pinnacle of bomber aviation, unmatched by any aircraft in China or Russia. You might argue that the B-2 Spirit and B-21 Raider are stealth aircraft, so wouldn't there be a risk that Chinese radar could detect them, allowing Beijing to mock the failed stealth operation on a global scale? To avoid such risks, stealth aircraft operating within enemy radar coverage are typically equipped with corner reflectors. These devices create strong radar reflections, making the aircraft more visible while masking its actual stealth characteristics. This means that a B-2 Spirit or B-21 Raider would likely have a corner reflector installed. Besides, the whole point of such a mission would be for the Chinese to detect the aircraft. If the B-2 Spirit were to fly over Taiwan, it would likely be a clear sign that the United States wanted to showcase its military power. The B-2 rarely operates in the Pacific, and its presence there would signal Washington's commitment to defending Taiwan in the event of a crisis. Moreover, the B-2 has frequently been involved in nuclear strike simulation missions, which would further raise tensions. The situation would become even more intriguing if the new B-21 Raider were involved in the incident. Officially unveiled at the end of 2022, the B-21 is the U.S. Air Force's next-generation bomber, featuring even greater stealth capabilities, upgraded avionics, and the ability to conduct both conventional and cyber warfare against enemy systems. So far, the B-21 has not been used in real-world missions, but its appearance in the skies over Taiwan would not just be a demonstration of strength, but a real-world test of the aircraft in a high-risk environment. Whether this flight would serve as reconnaissance, psychological pressure, or a direct challenge to Beijing, it would undoubtedly be a major geopolitical event. The implications of such a flight would be profound. The United States might present it as a routine military operation or a response to China's aggressive moves in the region. Meanwhile, China would have to decide on its response, ranging from diplomatic condemnation to actual military countermeasures. The world would once again hold its breath, watching the next chapter in the U.S.-China power struggle unfold in the skies over Taiwan. A potential response from China would depend on the intensity of the situation and how Beijing interprets the flight. There are several likely scenarios for China's reaction, ranging from diplomatic measures to direct military action. The most cautious response would involve official condemnation and increased military exercises. The Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs would issue a strong statement calling the U.S. actions irresponsible and a provocation. The American ambassador in Beijing might be summoned for a formal protest. Simultaneously, the People's Liberation Army, PLA, could announce unscheduled drills in the Taiwan Strait, increase naval and air patrols, and reinforce its military presence in the region. This would allow China to demonstrate resolve without escalating the situation into open conflict. If China perceives the flight as a direct challenge to its national security, a more aggressive response could follow. The PLA Air Force might deploy fighter jets, such as the J-20 Stealth Interceptor, to intercept or escort the American bomber, potentially forcing it to alter course. China's already demonstrated aggressive tactics against U.S. reconnaissance aircraft in the past, including dangerous close encounters. This time, its actions could be even more assertive. Beijing could also escalate by conducting missile tests near Taiwan. In previous crises, China has launched ballistic missiles into the waters surrounding the island as a warning. A new round of missile drills could signal Beijing's willingness to take stronger military steps if the U.S. continues to challenge its claims over Taiwan. Chinese military leaders might also declare that if similar incidents occur in the future, they'll have no choice but to take decisive action. Such a response carries the risk of unintended escalation. If Chinese fighter jets were to fire at an American aircraft, the U.S. would be forced to respond, leading to a direct military confrontation between two superpowers. Given the stakes involved, Washington and Beijing would likely seek to avoid such an outcome, but even a miscalculation could push the situation beyond control. Alternatively, China might opt for a more restrained but still impactful response by leveraging its economic power. Beijing could impose restrictions on American businesses, targeting industries vital to U.S. interests. This could include banning purchases from Boeing, imposing sanctions on major U.S. tech companies, or tightening export controls on critical raw materials, such as rare earth metals, which are essentially for global high-tech production. At the same time, China could use state-controlled media to fuel nationalist sentiments, portraying the incident as an example of American aggression. This would serve as a justification for further military expansion and an increase in defense spending. Predicting exactly how China would react is difficult, but one thing's clear: an American bomber flying over Taiwan would significantly escalate tensions. The incident would be more than just a military event. It would be a signal that the U.S. is willing to push its strategic advantage in the region. Up until now, it's mostly been China that raised the stakes by conducting military exercises near Taiwan and violating its air defense zone. A bomber mission would indicate that Washington is now willing to take bolder actions of its own. This would serve as an indicator of shifting power dynamics. If the U.S. feels confident enough to escalate its military presence in Taiwan's vicinity, it suggests that Washington believes it has strengthened its position. More importantly, such a move would send a message to China that the U.S. will not back down if Beijing attempts to change the status quo by force. However, there's also a broader geopolitical dimension to consider. The situation around Taiwan is unfolding alongside major global shifts. The recent moves by former U.S. President Donald Trump, who radically altered the country's foreign policy and moved toward rapprochement with Russia, have shocked the world. Trump's apparent willingness to end the Russia-Ukraine war, even at the cost of making concessions to Moscow, signals a fundamental shift in American strategy. If the U.S. and Russia reach an understanding, this could reshape the global balance of power. Washington's primary objective would be to sever the strategic partnership between China and Russia, which has become one of the biggest threats to American dominance. By making concessions to Putin on Ukraine, the U.S. might seek to secure at least Russian neutrality in the event of a future U.S.-China confrontation. A bomber flight over Taiwan could be part of this larger strategy. It'd be a demonstration that with Russia no longer an immediate concern, the U.S. can now fully concentrate on countering China. If Beijing interprets this move as a sign that Washington has reached an agreement with Moscow, it could change its calculations. Of course, the U.S. would not publicly state the true objectives behind such a flight. Instead, the official justification would be ambiguous and open to interpretation. Pentagon representatives would limit their remarks to statements about routine strategic aviation missions and commitments to regional stability. The White House would likely emphasize that the U.S. continues to respect the One China policy while remaining committed to Taiwan's security. The media would be flooded with analysis and speculation about the incident. Some experts would suggest that the bomber may have strayed from its planned course due to technical issues. Others would argue that it was a deliberate provocation. Regardless of the interpretation, the event would dominate global headlines, further straining U.S.-China relations. China's response would ultimately shape the next phase of this geopolitical struggle. If Beijing chooses to escalate, tensions in the Taiwan Strait could reach unprecedented levels. If it opts for a restrained reaction, the U.S. may see this as an opportunity to increase pressure, leading to further confrontations in the future. In the end, a stealth bomber's flight over Taiwan would not simply be a military maneuver, it would be part of a larger geopolitical game, one that could redefine the balance of power in the Pacific. The U.S. would be signaling that it's ready to challenge China more directly than before. Whether Beijing chooses to accept these new terms or push back aggressively would determine the course of events in one of the world's most dangerous flashpoints. The question remains, how far would China be willing to go? Would it escalate militarily, retaliate economically, or opt for strategic patience? The stakes are higher than ever, and each move in this power struggle could bring the world closer to a dangerous confrontation.